There has been a prevailing attitude for years of permissiveness, of look the other way, of arrogance. How dare you even bring it up? It says in the Bible, judge not lest you be judged. So why are you judging your brother? I got to make rational judgments, and I've got to make moral judgments. I don't want to condemn my brother. I'm not God. But if something is outrageous and in your face, it is sinful not to do something about it. Do you understand you can commit a mortal sin by collaborating with the sin of another, by enabling the sin of another, by ignoring the sin of another, by confirming the sin of another? You commit sin yourself. And many of us sat in guilty silence. And indeed, all that evil requires is that good men and women remain silent. And so the problems compounded themselves. We were beaten into a kind of submission. If you rocked the boat when you were a seminarian, they chastised you bitterly. The next time, you wouldn't be too quick to open your mouth. And you were trained to shut up and go along with the program. And then you got in a parish and you wanted to preach the truth, and you wanted to tell the people, avoid evil, do good. You wanted to tell them all the things you needed to tell them. But you thought twice about it, because they said, don't rock the boat. Don't push it. And every once in a while, they made an example out of someone. And I know some of the examples. 30 years ordained, 40 years ordained. Father, we don't have an assignment for you. You talk too much. You aggravate people. We've had complaints about you. No salary. No benefits, no retirement, no health insurance. Why don't you go get married, they told one priest of 33 years, who had been unjustly accused by a psychotic woman who had a history of exactly that. And they knew it. But you see, Father was a very faithful, solid moral preacher, and he called them. They said, we have no assignment for you, you're finished, why don't you go get married? That's what they said. Father drives a taxi cab at the age of 70. We could have cleaned up the house ourselves. Do you remember a certain example of a certain little nun with a big mouth who got in an argument with a certain person who had authority in the church? And at a certain meeting of bishops and cardinals, one of them said, we got to get rid of the little nun with a big mouth. We can't have little nuns with big mouths criticizing bishops and cardinals. And another bishop spoke up and said, oh yes, I agree. However, I have here a list of 157 bishops and cardinals who openly defy the teaching of the Holy Father, and I say let's get rid of them first. And the conversation ended very abruptly. Are there things wrong with the church? Yes, but there's nothing wrong with the divine institution of the church. What is wrong is individual human beings who have failed to be faithful to the church and to Christ. What is wrong is a way of acting, a way of governing that is arrogant, condescending, patronizing. It's got to go. What is wrong is a church that acts like a triumphant church while it's still on the face of the earth. A triumphant church is in heaven. On this earth, the militant church is to be a humble church and a servant church. And if we do not humble ourselves, then God will humiliate us. If we do not clean up our own house, then God, through his secular instruments, will clean up the church. We can do it the easy way, which is humility, or the hard way. My Uncle Tony used to say, boy, some people, you got to hit them between the eyes with a 2x4 just to get their attention. We had a 2x4 September 11th. We got another 2x4 in the church now, hitting us right in the face. How will we respond? Arrogant denial, humble submission. Bow lowly under the hand of God. Be humble, and God will raise you up. For surely God exalts the humble, but he humbles the proud. There is only one possible response to this mess: humility. Acknowledgement of guilt where guilt is concerned. And then change things. We cannot afford to be permissive any longer. A bishop has to be a man, first and foremost. He has to be a man. And although I hate to criticize a bishop, and they're criticized too much, and I sympathize with them, all of them, they have an awfully hard job. The weight of the world is on their shoulders. And so we must pray for them. But they've got to be a man, first and foremost. And sometimes a man has to do hard things. A man who's head of a family sometimes has to do awful difficult things. And maybe a lot of people won't like him for doing those things. You know how it is when you're a parent and you got to punish your children, when you got to correct them? You say, no, you're not going to do that. And they defy you. Sometimes you have to exercise your authority in no uncertain terms. That authority is service in the final analysis. You know, they throw a tantrum. I've seen priests throw tantrums in front of bishops. How should the bishop respond? Same way a parent should respond when the kid throws a tantrum. What would I do about it? Well, I'd let him rant and rave. But it's still the same. You're not going to do it. You're not going to do it. Well, what if I don't? Then you'll be doing something else. Once I was doing a job for a bishop in a certain diocese, and a number of priests marched in and demanded that the bishop fire me. And the bishop said, well, if you can prove that he's teaching something other than the truth, I will have to fire him, because I hired him to teach the truth. Can anyone here convict him of not teaching the truth? And they said, no, but we demand that you fire him, and if you don't, we'll go on strike. And I told the bishop, you missed your big chance. He said, what do you mean? I said, you should have had Father so-and-so, your secretary, draw a line on the floor with chalk and say, okay, boys, who's first? Cross it. Remove his faculties and see who else tries it. Walk softly, carry a big stick. That's what Teddy Roosevelt used to say. And maybe the advice is good. Permissive parents often lose their children. They lose the respect of their children. Permissive bishops lose the respect of their priests and people. Sometimes they have to stand up and be a man and say it will be this, 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 and this. Now let me tell you how it happens. Father stops praying. Father stops making his holy hour. Father has no devotion to Our Lady. Father badmouths the Pope up one side and down the other. Father listens to every liberal left-wing theologian to come down the pike with a goofy idea. And then Father begins to drift into moral never, never land. And he sinks lower and lower. And then one day, you read about it in the newspapers. Was it a surprise? Oh, no. In the seminary, overtly homosexual men acting out their lifestyle, their orientation. Other seminarians complain and are chastised for it. How dare you judge? And they go on and get ordained. And I had one tell me that he was part of a group. And they were involved in orgies, drugs, parties, limousines. 20 years he lived as part of that. And one morning early he woke up and he said, I'm going to die. It came spontaneously, right out of his sleep. I'm going to die. He went to Fatima. He went to confession. He came back, called his superior, said, I'm leaving. I have health problems. I've got to transfer. Went someplace else, began to live a saintly life. One of the best priests I know. I'm going to leave you with a story from the annals of St. Francis of Assisi. When he was toward the end of his life and already acclaimed a saint, St. Francis was going through a region, and he came to a town. He had the stigmata already, and St. Francis had the stigmata with the spikes through his hands and feet. He couldn't walk. And they had to take him on a donkey or a horse. He was in pain. He was blind from an eye disease, his whole body in pain. They came to a town, and there the parish priest was living in sin with a woman. And the people were scandalized. The people were irate. Now St. Francis was here, and they said, we will tell the saint, and he will go, and he will upbraid that sinful priest. And so they went in procession with candles and torches lit, and they came up to the rectory, and they pounded on the door. And the poor, unfortunate sinner of a priest came out. And they led St. Francis, almost blind, unable to walk. And they said, here he is. Here's the priest. St. Francis fell down on his knees. He took the man's hands in his own and he kissed them. And he said, all I know and all I want to know is that these hands bring me Jesus. The man was converted on the spot. He lived a holy, priestly life, and he died a holy death. With that, I leave. God bless you.